let's start with James Harden. James Harden, it seems like there might be like some traction on a Clippers deal potentially. Uh, Even though it's clear that the 76ers aren't getting what they need from the Clippers yet, as Woj will tell us here momentarily in this clip, let's hear basically what is going on with the Clippers.
Offer, given they're the only team that is bidding. Clippers would like to get a deal done sooner than later. They also don't want to raise their offer, given they're the only team that is bidding on him. They've offered Philly more than anybody else has. A first-round pick, a pick swap, expiring contracts. What the Clippers are trying to do right now are essentially saying to Daryl Morey, okay, you don't believe that our 2028 unprotected first has enough value. They're going around to other teams and seeing if that 28 pick and or a pick swap gets them maybe multiple picks. So if you're a team that is either the teams who are interested in this conversation, teams who have lots of picks, and say, okay, we'll give you 2 protected picks for that chance in 2028 where we think you might be really bad, right? You age out with these stars, you don't have young players. Where Daryl Morey's looking at the Clippers and saying, Steve Ballmer's never been under 500. They will figure out a way to have a competitive team. That may not be a great pick. And so I think for the Clippers right now, we're not trying to offer you more. We're not giving you that 2030 first-round pick. But let's see what we can turn that 2028 pick, see if we can flip it, and then see if there's something that more interests Daryl Morey. But that being said, there's no traction. They're not close to anything. The Clippers.
So, as Woj says, like, they're not close to anything, but it feels like he says there's no traction there, but like when the Clippers are calling around and like trying to get something done, there are teams to do that with. Like the ones that stand out immediately, obviously, are Utah, Oklahoma City. Like obviously they just have an immense number of picks that frankly, like they might not be able to use all of moving forward. So I don't know. And like, if you're the Sixers, you probably want picks that transfer a little bit sooner as opposed to later, which in this case, that Clippers pick would be 2028, I believe, in terms of an unprotected pick. He also mentioned they're willing to offer a pick swap, which is interesting. But again, as Woj says in that clip, I don't know how valuable a pick swap with the Clippers is necessarily, just because the Clippers have been pretty good under Steve Ballmer's ownership because they pay and they spend and everything like that. So basically, though, Woj does lay out the bones of the offer here. It seems like the offer is Marcus Morris, one of Nick Batum or Robert Covington, maybe even both, honestly, I guess. It'd probably have to be both. So it'd probably be Morris, Batum, Covington for James Harden. And then they've added a first round pick and a pick swap in there. That's what makes the most sense based on what Woj said. And I don't know, that feels not disastrous, but I also understand why Philly doesn't want to do that.
I mean, my thing is this really about the picks, or can Philly make this trade, Sam, and not go to bed every night freaking out that Joel Embiid is the next one to ask for a trade? Because where are you getting with those guys? And I think all 3 of them are expiring, if I'm not mistaken. And I realize they're setting up for free agency and to have this cap space next offseason. But you can't punt on a full season when you have Joel Embiid. And I realize Tyrese Maxey is there and he'll probably come in and fill a really big role. But I don't think the pick is what's holding it up here. It's, you got to get something that can help you win games this year, right? Don't you? If you're Philly, I feel like you do.
So to me, what I hear when I hear that is that Daryl Morey doesn't really care about the actual like substance of the draft pick, right? Like he doesn't look, he might want to use like a couple of them, but like he doesn't want to like take that draft pick and like take it to the draft. I think he wants it like for the asset of having the
Moving
draft
on to
pick.
the next thing. Yeah.
And the big thing worth noting with the 76ers is that if they play their cards right in terms of keeping cap space open this year and then maintaining the low cap hold on Tyrese Maxey by not extending him, which it seems like is going to be the play for them, they can have damn near max cap space to the point where they could maneuver and make it work by, maybe moving PJ Tucker in the offseason, something like that. Maybe trying to, move PJ Tucker in this James Harden deal if they could. I would imagine that wouldn't be a problem for them. And honestly, like if the Clippers really want Harden, they might be willing to take PJ Tucker back in this deal, especially given that if they're taking back expiring salary or if they're trading expiring salaries out, those guys are Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, Robert Covington. They actually might be able to use PJ Tucker in terms of depth. So it could make a real tremendous amount of sense. Like if the Sixers really want to, and they're able to move Tucker, they have Joel Embiid's $51 million on the books next year. They could potentially only really have like the Tyrese Maxey cap hold on top of that, which the Maxey cap hold, I believe, would be right around 13 million. So you're talking about $64 million on their books, depending on what they want to do with Jaden Springer as well, because he has a club option that they're going to have to make a decision on here coming up. And then they also have the $7 million on Paul Reed that they can play with. And, that's a non-guaranteed deal. So it becomes guaranteed if they make a deep run, but they're probably not going to make a deep run without James Harden if they don't get anything back. So to me, what I look at when I see all of this is I think the Sixers want to maintain cap space for next offseason where they can hopefully go out and get some sort of free agency star. Let's say Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, one of those two leave, maybe both of them leave. You could look at, even though they're
Pascal's
both from LA,
a free agent, right?
I don't know if they want to. Pascal's a free agent. OG Anunoby can hit free agency. There are names that you can theoretically look at and see as really interesting fits with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Do I think this is the right strategy? I don't think they're in. I don't think they have a great strategy here. So I think that like you made the wrong call on Harden. It seems like going to get him. Now you're trying to make the best of a shit sandwich, and I think they're probably going about it the right way. I wouldn't want this Clippers pick. I like the idea of making the Clippers go out to like Oklahoma City and saying, "Hey, you guys have more picks than you're going to be able to use in the next 4 years. Give us 2 for 1 here, or something like that. We'll give you the pick unprotected in 2028. The Thunder did a deal very similar to this with the Nuggets this past NBA draft. So maybe it's Utah, maybe it's the Thunder. Utah obviously did a kind of interesting deal with the Conley, Vanderbilt, Beasley situation where they took an unprotected, basically Lakers pick instead of getting like a bunch of picks for them. So this could be a valuable asset, an unprotected Clippers pick, but I don't necessarily know what to do with it yet either.
So that was the other interesting aspect to me, is that Morey doesn't value that pick, but do other teams. Would you just take that pick over something they're going to get in exchange from the Thunder or the Jazz? I don't think you're going to trade with the Knicks, because I think we all know what the Knicks are saving up assets to try to do. And so I don't think that they're going to get in on this. PG in 2028, PG-13 will be 37, Kawhi 36, Harden 38. And as Woj said in that clip, there's not a whole lot of influx of young talent with the Clippers. Now, it was also, you've mentioned this, or maybe it was Woj in the clip. They have been solid for over a decade now. But what would you do then, Sam? Would you just take that? Let's say you're going to do the deal, right? Like you have to trade James Harden. He's not going to come back and play for you. You got to move in. Like it just is what it is. You got to take the expirings. That's part of the deal. Are you going to take that 2028 and a 2029 pick swap, or would you tell the Clippers, go get us something better?
I would tell them, go get us more. Okay. For sure. I would. I would tell them to go get me something different. And if that doesn't exist, then you're kind of in a tough spot. But I do think that there are real options there. And look, like it could be like that you have to negotiate this on your end, right? Like Daryl Morey might have to actually make the effort here. But to me, you want a large
you want something
number of
sooner?
picks.
You want something sooner? Is that what you would want? Right? You want something in 24, 25, 26.
I think I want something in those next 3 years as opposed to like the 2028 pick that the Clippers can offer and a pick swap.
Yeah.
I would want all of the potential. I would want a higher number of assets given that my quantity of assets to move in a potential star trade down the road is actually quite low right now. Beyond like my own picks, right? Because they could theoretically have some picks, but it is theoretical at this point.
And it lets our guy Coach Spins get in on his draft scouting right away in the next couple of
Love it.
years. And you got Coach Spins scouting, so you're going to hit on these picks. Let me throw this one at you, Sam. You've tweeted about Buddy Hield, right? I tried to come up with some other alternate universe options here.
Mhm.
Would you even consider 3-team deal? Buddy Hield's on an expiring, Sam. You do a 3-team deal. You bring in Buddy Hield, who at least helps you be a little bit competitive this year. You're not going to be better than the Celtics and the Bucks, but you're not going to be better than them anyway. Bring in
Mhm.
Buddy Hield. Maybe that appeases Joel. You're just good enough that Joel's still happy. He's on an expiring. You get all the cap space. Is that a better alternative than maybe taking back some of the draft assets? Because you're not getting all the draft assets then.
But what are you giving up for Buddy Hield? You're
That's what
probably
the
losing.
picks. The
Yeah.
pick.
To me, I would rather just have the picks in that
I think
circumstance
I
and
agree with you.
almost treat this. Look, this is going to suck, but like I think you kind of have to treat this as a punt year if you're losing Harden and not getting any like current value back, and you just have to hope that Joel rocks with it. Look, the issue is that I don't think Buddy Hield tangibly changes their title hopes this year, and I
Yeah.
don't think that Buddy Hield tangibly changes like their long-term hopes to keep Joel Embiid.
I agree.
So I think you have to have an open conversation with Joel Embiid at this stage and just be like, look, this is what's going on. And Joel's going to ask for a trade or he's not going to ask for a trade.
Yeah.
Right. And if he asks for a trade, then, you have to work through that situation. And if he doesn't, then he's willing to go along with it. And you see what it looks like this offseason. You basically just have to get Joel to this offseason.
Yep.
And then you have to see what you can build with him. Like, as long as you get Joel to this offseason, you might be okay. But you then have to prove to him this offseason that you're not going to like fail. You're not going to like fail him. If you do, then you actually probably do have to move Joel this offseason. Like if you can't get a max player, you can't use these assets to go out and get another star, right? Then that's when a rebuild becomes like a real thing. And then you move Joel for all the assets that you can imagine. And that's an interesting way to look at things too. That's so far down the road. I don't want to dive into like the asset haul that Joel Embiid would
Oh
get.
man, yeah.
But that's where you're at. Like, I think you kind of have to treat this season not as a punt because with Joel, you probably win 45 games, 42 games, something like that as it is, if you move Harden and don't get any current value back. But it's tricky. It's a really hard spot.
And I guess that's where I asked you last that time I was on about like, do the Bucks and Celtics making the moves they made kind of change the mindset of some teams? And if I'm the Sixers, I'm like, I'm not competing with those teams either way. I don't know if they're competing if James Harden stays with the Sixers. And so it's almost
I don't
like,
think they are.
yeah,
So
so that's a tough conversation to have with Joel Embiid, right? That sucks. But it's also like you're professionals. This is the game. This is what it is. And like you say, that's why you get paid a lot of money. That's why you're in the spot you're in, to go to him and have this conversation and say, hey, we're going to go win as many games as we can this year with what we have. This is our situation. Lay it all out there, Joel. Stay with us for a year and then let us prove to you in the offseason that we're going to go be title contenders in 2024, 2025. And like you said, maybe Joel tells you to kick rocks and I want to go to New York or wherever. I know Knicks fans have to be eating this up right now because they've been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah, like Lawrence Field in the YouTube comments says, I think the Knicks and maybe the Jazz would be the only bidders on the Embiid sweepstakes. I disagree, but I do think the Knicks would be strongly interested. So that's really what would matter in this. And if you're moving Embiid, you're getting 5 firsts and whatever else, right? Like it'd be a really ridiculous haul. given what he's capable of.
Sam, real quick, and I know we got other stuff. We're getting a lot of feedback on you can't punt with Joel Embiid. You can't punt with Joe. What are their other options, Sam? Like, you're just gonna keep James Harden, an unhappy James Harden? Like right now, he's showing up. He's doing what he's actually handling it the right way. It sounds like all the reports sound like he's being a professional, which great. What are you gonna? What do you do? What are their other? Nobody else is in the James Harden sweepstakes. So I don't know what they've already made the mistake, as you alluded to earlier. I don't know what they do with it now. It just is what it is almost. I hate to say it, but I don't know what the alternative is.
I mean, the alternative is that you just try and like win now and like
You
you go
just
and get
keep
like
him.
you just you keep turning over draft picks into, whatever you can get. And you say, Joel, go win us 50 and everything like that. But I don't, that's not what I would do. I think that's a bad strategy personally. Uh, And I think James Harden is like royally screwed them here if he's not willing to stay. Like truly, he's just royally screwed them, and there's not another way to put that, given how much faith and value that Daryl Morey put in him. And you can say Daryl Morey like screwed this up in some respect as well. But as Cuckoo DMV says, punting a year with the current MVP is crazy. I get that, and more than anything, that's a hard sell to Joel, and that's why you need to know what's going on here. Like you need to have that conversation with Joel. Joel is a very confident person. He knows that, he wants to win a title. He's very competitive. But do you think this team's contending with, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, and, DeAnthony Melton and Paul Reed and those guys? I mean, you keep like Marcus Morris and bring back Robert Covington and Nick Batum, and then you're hoping for Pat Bev and Jaden Springer to step in and Oubre to step in. Like that team can't compete with the Celtics. I'm sorry, the team cannot compete with the Bucks either. I'm sorry.
And Embiid still has a few more like prime years. I just looked it up. Embiid is 29. And so you still have a championship, elite MVP level window with him. But I understand what people are saying. It just sucks to think that you would lose a year of really competing when he's in his prime. I get it. I completely understand it. It sucks. I know I keep saying it. I don't know what the option is, Sam, unless, like I say, like you try to trade for Buddy Hield, or does Malcolm Brogdon change how many games you're going to win this year if you do a 3-team with the Portland Trailblazers? Those were the only two names I could come up with.
Probably, like those guys probably do help you a lot, but they don't move the needle like in a series with Boston. They don't
And
move the
Brogdon's
needle
on
in
a
a
2-year
series with
contract, Sam. So Brogdon actually hurts your flexibility going into the offseason now. So if you want to say, hey, bring in the sixth man of the year, reigning sixth man of the year, that makes you better, more competitive. Sure. But now where's the cap flexibility going into the summer? So
they're in a rock and a hard place right now, like just right in between it. And I feel for 76ers fans because God, like, look, I think that there were mitigating factors in terms of why the process ended up, being cut short. And I think that Sam Hinkie would have done a drastically better job than the mix of the Colangelos, Brett Brown, Elton Brand, and now the unfortunately poor decision by Daryl Morey to go all in with James Harden. But I feel for 76ers fans. I do.
real quick, I don't feel like everybody talks about the other side of this. How good is the Harden PG-13 Kawhi team? Is that second best team in the West? I assume we're going to work under the Nuggets or the best. That depth did take a hit in Denver, as we'll talk about a little bit later. Whenever we get into some of these guys, we're going to break out guys we're going to talk about. But second best team in the West?
They'd be in the conversation for sure. I think the Lakers are going to be awesome
Yeah.
for reasons I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yep.
Like it's just such a deep, it's such a
Crazy.
deep group of teams. Like Phoenix is going to be good. Like Nurkic is going to help their offense for sure.
I forgot.
I don't know how they're going to defend, but like that offense is going to be a monster. Like I don't think the Timberwolves are in this conversation really to like be at the top of the league, but I think the Timberwolves are going to be good.
Another guy we're going to talk about later. Yeah, the Timberwolves are interesting. Man, that West is a bloodbath, man.
It's a bloodbath. And then we haven't even mentioned like Dallas. Like Dallas might be like the 8th or 9th best team, and Oklahoma City might be like the 9th or 10th best team. That team is loaded. Like I love that group so much. It's I mean, look, like they have Tobias Harden and PJ Tucker's contracts to play with this season. They have several avenues to acquire a team that makes sense around Embiid and Maxey. Totally agree with that. It's just reducing their flexibility in the offseason to do it. So they have to make a calculated decision based on that open conversation that you have with Joel Embiid. Joel, are you going to ask? I mean, you can't do it like this, but like, Joel, are you going to ask out if we have to if we try and take it to the offseason to acquire talent when it's a little bit easier? It's hard to acquire stars in the season. Like, I know that Kevin Durant and Kyrie moved last year. That was kind of a weird extenuating circumstance. It's typically pretty hard for stars to move in the middle of the season. So we shall see.